So here is just a little bit about fonts. We're going to do a quick overview, but just so you know, fonts and the art of font designing has been around for a long time and had become essentially a fine art and sometimes a science. So I've included a couple of links to some very awesome font nerdy sites that you can dig into if this stuff interests you. So what exactly is a font? A font is a set of type of one particular face and size. So being technical, we're going to say that a font is a grouping of typefaces that have similar characteristics. So in this Serif example, there are 9 variations or typefaces. This is all one font. It's referred to as a font family. So a typeface refers to an individual family member of that font. After we've said that, we're pretty much going to use the term font interchangeably. I will also use terms like what weight of that font. This top one is called light. Ones that are slanted forward are italic. Ones that are thick and heavy tend to be bold. And there are a few other variations, but this covers the main realm of those. So the type of font can carry a lot of meaning and character, just kind of depending on the way they look. So you need to remember that when you're choosing a font, that it should fit the tone of the project. You can kind of think of fonts as the voice of your project. Now here's an example of a font being a voice. So the one on the left is Impact Font. It says no. It says no pretty firmly. In fact, it would probably say no means no. Edwardian script doesn't say no very firmly. It's a little bit more of a flirty look, so you could say no means maybe, and let's just not go further than that. But you get the idea that the font you choose to write something in can change the meaning of what that word actually says. So there are things known as font classifications. And these are forming categories that we stick all the fonts into, and they've got lots of subcategories, but right now we'll just deal with the major 4 ones. The No, for example, is a sans serif, and this is a script font. So let's take a look at these. Sans serif. The characteristics of a sans serif is it means it's without feet. So to understand what a feet or serif is, let's start with serif. I misnumbered these. My bad. Let's start with serif. So a serif is the little foot down here at the bottom. Those were initially invented for metal type presses where the type was actually chunks of metal that was set and the ink would be rolled across it and it would keep that ink from dripping down the paper. This is a style that's remained even now, though we don't actually use that type of printer anymore. Now we've got a digital one, so dripping ink isn't really an issue, but it's become a style that we're used to. So anything with feet is a serif font, which means, this one we first looked at, the sans serif font means without. Sans is without feet. There's a whole bunch of different examples here. A lot of modern advertising uses this font. This one has a more modern look, where serif fonts, like I said, had been around for such a long time, they have a more traditional look. Script fonts tend to be formal and elegant and can be used for extensive body, well, not extensive like a whole book body of type, but you could create a paragraph in a nice script font and it would still be readable. Don't highly recommend it, but it would still be readable. The last category is decorative fonts, and these should never be used for an entire paragraph. Mostly they're used for headlines and attention grabbers. Often decorative fonts only have the alphabet. They might not even have both lowercase and capitals. So when you're picking fonts, you'll watch out for that. And I'll show you in on DaFont how to look for that sort of thing in a few minutes. Let's take a look at some of the villains of the font world. This is my overused font list. Papyrus is at the very top. And as I said on my website, if you cringed like I did when the Avatar people, the Na'vi, I think, started talking and their words were written in papyrus, then you might know something about how bad this font is. Comic Sans, same thing, it's been overused. Arial, Helvetica, Times, Impact. All of these upper ones, maybe with the exception of Papyrus, have been around for quite a while, so they're actually very well constructed fonts. The kerning between letters is regular when you type with it. It's got all of its letters, numbers, and symbols. Mostly we're just tired of seeing it, and there's so many other fonts choices out there that you can easily pick something that's even similar but not quite the same thing just to give your project a fresh look. The ones on the bottom, Bleeding Cowboy has been used on every other project out there, at least where I am at in the world. I see it a lot. Curls is a dreaded font. It's hard to read, and it's also been around for quite a while. So these are the overused font lists. Now, does that make them bad fonts? Again, no, it doesn't. But it just means that you're falling back on the old traditional, and there's some really cool font sites out there to choose something fresh and new from. In fact, those Comic Sans and Papyrus are such villainized fonts in the font and typographic world that somebody out there made a, I don't know if it's an entire font or if it's just this, but a Comic Papyrus. And a coworker of mine says that it makes designers everywhere cry tears of rage, which kind of made me laugh. Alright, what else is important to know about fonts? Legibility is a huge one. Now, you might not know it, but that top is actually a font, and it's illegible. You can't read it. In fact, you wouldn't even know what that said if it weren't for the same thing being down here in a different decorative font. So this is a graffiti font, and something that is so stylized that it's illegible is better off used as a graphic instead of an actual tool to write headlines or copy with. So what should you look for when you're searching for a font? Let's go to my favorite font site, which is dafont.com. I like this one for a couple of reasons. It's very well organized, and I can find a category. Now remember I told you there were some classifications. Beneath those classifications there's all sorts of subcategories, and these are pretty much the subcategories, so you can find what you want pretty quickly. Let's look for a sans serif font, so without feet. Here it gives me the option to preview more than 20. I can also type what I want it to say. So right now it's showing me the name of the actual font, but I could tell it to show me my usual, which is capital ABC, lowercase abc, the numbers 1, 2, 3, and then a couple of symbols and punctuation marks. A well-constructed font will have all of these characters, but a lot of these fonts won't, as you'll see in a second. So if we hit submit, it will search for fonts. And you can see here, these ones up at top do have all of those symbols. Starting here, this one doesn't have an @ or hashtag. Moving down, you can see some more. So a lot of times if a font doesn't have symbol, you'll get something like this rectangular X'd out box. Now the last reason I really like Dafont is because you can tell it to show the variants and then hit submit again. So this will show you the individual typefaces of that font if it has any. So for example, this Bebas New only has capitals. It does have capitals and the alphabet and numbers, it just doesn't have lowercase. So you can see this one has more variations. You can click on the headline of the font, which will take you to its page, and it will show anything that the artist has put up for it. So this one gives an example of it in color. You can see the individual characters and everything is laid out. So a well-constructed font, you should be able to see all of those things for it. Another thing to watch out for is a lot of fonts actually don't have the numbers that match the font, and I'm not seeing anything right off the bat. It's actually pretty good that I haven't seen any so far. Well, let's pop back to my screen capture example. This font is a serif font. It's actually a slab serif font. Slab serifs mean that the serifs are flat rectangular slabs. Now if I zoom in a little so you can see this better. Oh, that's such a low resolution, I'm not sure that's any better. You can see that the alphabet has been styled nicely, but the numbers and the symbols actually are from something that's maybe like Times. They don't match the rest of the font at all. So if you have a project that you're using numbers predominantly, you might want to find a separate font